Why in the F is that security guard all up on Sophie Cunningham? And look, I think there is a reason she got up in Sophie's face. And I don't think there was any need to sort of bow up to Sophie like that.
The WNBA will have to turn things around after the Indiana Fever finally secured a postseason moment worth savoring. Delight in theater. After their significant victory, Sophie Cunningham, wearing a leg brace, simply wanted to support her colleagues. Instead, in the middle of the jubilation, a league security guard chose to act heroically and bark at her. The fans weren't pleased. Do you believe Sophie is purposefully singled out by the WNBA because she doesn't match their narrative? Please share your opinions below. The scenario was ready. The Indiana Fever had just achieved one of their greatest victories in years, moving on in the postseason without. Sidelined is Caitlin Clark. The players were having a great time, the audience was electrifying, and Sophie Cunningham, who has been dealing with her own injury, was on the bench showing support for her team. Nothing contentious. Nothing is wrong. Just a street-clad athlete applauding her colleagues.
Odyssey Sims hit the floor very hard during the game last night, and her teammates came out to the floor to check on her, except, of course, the girls on the bench, Caitlin Clark, Chloe Bibby, Sophie Cunningham, they came to half court. Did not cross the line, by the way. But for whatever reason, we had a situation involving Paula Blart, mall cop. That's right, played this time in the role by Wheezy from Jefferson, the Jeffersons. Showed up last night to try to check Sophie Cunningham. Did she think Sophie Cunningham was about to run out there cause an incident? Sophie Cunningham's in a damn leg contraption. It's not even a brace. It's like a contraption.
However, it seems it was sufficient to trigger the WNBA's own rent-a-cop. Suddenly, the league security information approached Sophie and accosted her as though she had just stormed the court or started a riot. To be clear, Sophie wasn't even there at the scorer's table, much less on the ground. She was applauding close to half court without violating any regulations. However, in typical WNBA manner, the story revolved around the optics.
Odyssey was holding her right shoulder.
Sophie's expression showed it. Disbelief followed by confusion and that signature Cunningham gaze. Honestly, who is to blame? She actually has a leg brace on, she's not running to the ground anytime soon, but the officer chose to act aggressively, pressing in on Sophie and yelling, rather than managing the situation properly. As if she were a troublemaker of some sort. It wasn't because Sophie did anything that the video went viral right away. Incorrect, but because it revealed the strange double standard that has been applied to her throughout her professional life.
This should be upgraded in any way. Odyssey was holding her right.
Fans were furious. In a matter of minutes, social media lighted up. The Fever's victory and Lexi Hull's game-changing performance weren't being discussed. Plays. They were discussing how Sophie Cunningham was handled like a criminal despite being hurt and applauding. The outcry was immediate and, to be honest, well-founded. The problem is that this isn't a singular occurrence. It fits into a pattern. Compare Sophie's coverage against that of other WNBA players. She is bold, self-assured, and unreservedly herself.
And I think we all know that if there's one thing that male sports fans want to see in their spaces and on their screens, it's more of me.
She is also one of the few athletes that publicly questions the narratives that are accepted by the league. Additionally, for that, she has been singled out by competing fan bases as well as some media sites. The fact that Sophie Cunningham has been called the WNBA's antagonist However, as the league's employees begin to treat her like one, that goes too far in the middle of a playoff victory. Let's dissect this rationally. The Fever made it to the semifinals. Caitlin Clark, Chloe Beebe, and Sophie Cunningham, the players on the bench, are all having fun from the sidelines. When a player is hurt, none of them enter the court. All they are doing is standing close to mid-court, responding as every team does at critical situations. However, only Sophie is confronted in some way. Why? Was Caitlin yelled at? Chloe was the number. Just Sophie, number. Fans saw this right away. Twitter's comment sections. There were many people criticizing the double standard on YouTube. Some were direct about it. Sophie is singled out because to her, it's blonde, white, and doesn't suit the league's desired narrative. The hypocrisy was brought to light by others. The league would have portrayed Angel Reese or Natasha Cloud as ardent if they had been in the same circumstance. Helpful teammates. However, Sophie, she is accused of being unruly and entitled. The irony in this situation is that Sophie didn't even have a bad reaction. She made it apparent that she would not be intimidated, held her position, and refused to back down. However, it was obvious that the entire event was superfluous. The officer was making a scene rather than upholding the law. Fans were furious when they saw that. There is more to this than a single altercation. It concerns the league's persistent issue with how it deals with players who don't fit the template. Caitlin Clark has been coping with this for the past 2 seasons. Hard fouls that are not called, persistent targeting on the field, and subsequent media narratives attempting to minimize her influence. Additionally, Sophie, who has always been divisive, becomes entangled in the same web. The WNBA appears committed to destroying her rather than embrace her popularity. Here, let's not overlook the numbers. Whether the WNBA executives like it or not, Sophie Cunningham is one of the most well-liked players in the league. Even when she's not playing, her presence raises the Fever's profile, she consistently trends, and her highlights receive clicks. In a league that is in dire need of attention and development, the fact that fans care about her should be significant. However, rather of taking advantage of that, the league permits incidents like this, in which a police officer publicly humiliates Sophie during a playoff celebration. Let's now discuss the fan response, which was quite harsh. Minutes after the video appeared, WNBA exposed and free Sophie became popular hashtags. The league was criticized by fans for its selective enforcement and for attempting to quiet players who don't comply. Some even likened it to earlier disputes, such as instances in which fans were unjustly accused of racism after jeering Angel Reese, or when Caitlin Clark's harsh fouls were dismissed as part of the game. The remarks weren't polite, and to be honest, they shouldn't have been. The security was being called. Officer everything from the WNBA's newest clown act to a power-hungry mall cop. And although that may sound harsh, it illustrates how irritated supporters are. Instead of celebrating basketball, kids are compelled to watch league. Officials make drama out of nothing. And that's the more significant problem here. The WNBA enjoys discussing development, about ratings and how, at last, people are taking them seriously. However, each time they receive attention, something similar takes place. Rather of allowing the wind of the Fever to shine, the narrative shifts to Sophie. A police officer is yelling at Cunningham. That is self-sabotage, not simply poor optics. There is a PR issue with this league, and it continues to worsen it. Supporters do not want their beloved athletes to be treated like criminals. For applause. They want to avoid being treated unfairly all the time. They most certainly do not want to be informed. Despite what their eyes tell them, everything is actually all right. Here's the worst part. This was not even a furious altercation, or a moment of chaos. It was a celebration. Joy of the playoffs, pure and simple. If the WNBA is unable to even allow it, what chance does it have of persuading casual viewers to care about the fact that players love that without making it controversial? Product. Since this issue did not simply go away overnight, let's fast forward to the fallout. In fact, it gained even more traction as supporters began learning more and became aware of how biased how Sophie was actually treated. Videos of Chloe Beebe and Caitlin Clark applauding at the same instant appeared on the internet. Mid-court, they were stood nearly shoulder to shoulder with Sophie, grinning and clapping. However, neither was challenged. Only Sophie growled at Chloe, and no police approached Caitlin. Fans began to piece together the story at that point. This has nothing to do with implementing a regulation, it has to do with delivering a message. This is where things start to become pretty interesting. Sophie Cunningham is not merely any participant. She is fiery, loud, and unconventional. She has become a target because she doesn't hesitate to voice her opinions. In a league that doesn't seem to like sincere people. She is not Paige Buchers, the media darling. She's not the league-approved Angel Reese, and she's not afraid to question authority. She has become divisive as a result of this combination, yet she has also gained popularity. By the way, the WNBA is in dire need of popularity. However, the league appears to make an effort to minimize her rather than embrace her as a draw. Take a look at the advertising. Compared to players who are half as relevant, how frequently do you see Sophie in WNBA promotions? Seldom ever. Examine the league's response to her related controversies in comparison to others. When Sophie engages in, she is portrayed as the antagonist and a rival. When someone else does, their passion is praised. Not only is it unjust, it's absurdly obvious, and the cop incident only served to stoke the flames. Fans witnessed Sophie being openly singled out, and they didn't accept the justifications. They asked a ton of questions on social media. Why, Sophie? Why right now? Why was a player with leg braces who couldn't even run 5 feet considered a security risk? It was all nonsensical. Unless, of course, you acknowledge the painful reality that Sophie Cunningham is a target. Let's zoom out now. What does this signify for the entire league? Because situations such as this don't only impact Sophie. They have an impact on how people view the WNBA as a whole. Many of the fans are casual viewers who are paying close attention, brought in by the fame of Caitlin Clark. These individuals already have doubts regarding women's basketball, who watched because it was thrilling because of Caitlin and the fever. But when they witness Sophie Cunningham being yelled at for applauding, they don't perceive professionalism. They perceive petty behavior. They perceive a league that prioritizes theatrics over basketball. That is an issue, because perception is crucial. You can discuss TV ratings, growth, and other topics. You deserve a pat on the back for becoming popular on Twitter. However, if supporters leave believing your league is a farce, that doesn't matter. And the reason so many people still don't take the WNBA seriously is precisely because of incidents like this. Not as a result of the players. Not due to skill. However, this is due to the absurdity surrounding the product. And supporters gave it to the league. Thousands of comments were sent, with many criticizing the commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, for overseeing what they referred to as the most awful sports league. Some went even farther, demanding her resignation, claiming that the WNBA has become a circus performance due to her leadership. When individuals are more engaged, if your off-court disputes outweigh your on-court output, that's failure rather than progress. And the interim. Sophie herself was an expert at handling the situation. She didn't openly lash out or exaggerate the situation. More than it was. She didn't back down though. Her non-verbal cues conveyed everything. You won't intimidate me. Fans appreciated that. They united around her, showering her with encouragement on social media, and reminded her that she has one among the league's most devoted supporter bases. Actually, if the league was astute, they would see that Sophie's. There is no end in sight to popularity. Her base gets stronger each time she is targeted. Each time she is treated disrespectfully. Fans increase their level of support. However, let's face it, the WNBA hasn't exactly established a reputation for intelligence when it comes to managing players. Take a look at Caitlin Clark's treatment. She was hammered for 2 seasons. On the court, fouled more frequently than anyone else, and the referees hardly offered any protection. Observe how they handled Lexi Hull following her performance in the playoffs. The league media hardly mentioned it at all. Sophie was now yelled at for having a party. Fans are making the connections because there is a trend. The league wishes to promote the notion that they are expanding because of all of them. In actuality, though, they are expanding as a result of a few key people. Caitlin Clark. Yes, Sophie Cunningham, Paige Buchers, and Angel Reese, that's the truth. The league as a whole gains, whether they acknowledge it or not, from their names. However, rather than endorsing every one of them equally, the league selects favorites and penalizes the others. It's an ill-advised tactic that will undoubtedly backfire. Because this is what will occur. Fans are not foolish. They observe the disparate treatment. They recognize the hypocrisy. they will ultimately become disinterested. A league that views its own stars as adversaries will lose their support. When that occurs, all of the sponsorships and TV deals won't be able to save them. The WNBA had an opportunity to celebrate the Fever's postseason run. Rather, they allowed Sophie Cunningham to be the subject of a security guard's barking. They had an opportunity to emphasize the team's tenacity in the absence of Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston's supremacy, and Lexi Hull's heroics. Rather, mall cop antics are being discussed by fans. That is self-destructive in addition to being embarrassing. In the end, Sophie's concern for her team was her crime. That's all. A leg brace. She was applauding. She was confronted as a threat as a result. If you still don't understand how the WNBA handles players who don't match their mold, I'm not sure what does. And admirers, they won't give up on this one. The indignation is increasing rather than decreasing. The amount of annoyance only grows with each tweet, video, and meme. But the WNBA can try to twist it. They desire, but people's opinions have already been formed. The league seemed petty, and Sophie Cunningham was wronged. Once more. Here we have another evening where the WNBA's foolishness, rather than the Fever's victory, is the story. Fans are enraged. The league embarrassed itself once more when Sophie refused to back down. What are your thoughts? Was it about regulations? Or was Sophie deliberately targeted? Leave a comment below, click like, and remember to subscribe for more unfiltered sports conversation.